first off, I'd like to say if you didn't think there'd be spoilers, you're wrong. So if you're not caught up on Soul Eater, obviously the manga and not the anime that ended like 3 years ago, or I guess 4 or 5 years ago, something like that, then you should catch up on the manga and then come back or pause and read or whatever you have to do. Catch up before watching this because I'm gonna be talking about the whole series and other stuff for the future of the manga and hope what I hope will end up being an anime again. So Soul Eater, unfortunately, happy sad type of thing. It is ending. I feel like it had to have end within this year because obviously they're fighting the Kishin. It's the ultimate boss. In the anime he was too because obviously he was the main villain, and they finally reached him. Everyone's done all their cool powers. Some people have died sadly. You know, death is gone, and now, well, I guess you know older death is gone. Death the kid, I guess technically we can't really call him kid anymore. He's gonna be death after they really talk about it and mention like he passed away because you went full Shinigami and stuff. He will just flat out be death. So old death, I guess. Unfortunately he's gone, which is kind of sad. And in the last chapter, which was actually pretty long, I think it was like 15 or 13 pages longer than normal because they're normally about 32 or 33, and this one was 43, if I remember right. In that one, I can't think of his name, but Maka's father and two of the other Death Sides, they actually got caught in the moon after um, Maka and Soul escaped the Kishin. And hopefully they won't actually die and they'll figure something out with that. And, with what Corona's doing with the brew, she'll be able to save at least them, if not him or herself, since they don't technically specify Corona's gender. But hopefully Corona will be able to save Maka's dad and the other Death Sides because I feel like obviously the connection between Maka and her dad is a big part of Soul Eater. How she's with her dad even though she pretty much hates him because he cheated on her mom a lot. But obviously when that happened, she was distressed because she wanted to go save him, and Black Star and Kid had to stop her from doing that because she would have been engulfed in, I guess, the darkness too. I'm definitely excited to see what they do for the next one. So obviously in your comments below, or if you comment, because most people don't, but if you do, let me know what you think is gonna be in the next chapter. Which I feel like they just couldn't encompass all of that in just 43 pages of they beat the enemy. I feel like they'd have to skip so much time for it to completely end. Like I feel like they'd have to have the ending, which I guess it would take 20 or 30 pages, and then I guess 15 extra might actually cover it as far as an epilogue. It could even be a day after they figure everything out. Like these are the people we lost, and this is what we have to do from now on to protect the world. But one thing I always thought was interesting, or I guess I especially find interesting now, is that Maka's mother never came into the manga. And obviously, when it didn't happen in the show, I figured, oh, the show, especially after I found out it kind of diverged from the manga, I figured, okay, well, she didn't come into it because the manga hadn't gone on long enough, so that's why they had to change the anime and, change it into its own single story, which is still really well done to me. That's what made me read the manga, and I even bought the show on Blu-ray. But it always seemed interesting that she, hasn't, she's been such a big part because of Maka's relationship with her dad. But she's also every time they talk about her is how powerful she was. She's like one of the best Death Sides like pretty much on the planet. And I always thought, okay, in the end fight, all this crazy stuff's gonna be going on. She's gonna come in at some point and help them in some way, shape, or form. And she still could. It could easily happen where, like I personally, based on how the last chapter ended with Corona having the brew inside of the Kishin, and Corona's just gonna wipe away the darkness pretty much. It could easily backfire. Anything could happen, and I mean, it would be a weird way to do it, I guess, since they flat out said, the final chapter is coming out next month, which, like, obviously I'm really excited to read. But anything could happen where Maka's mother could come into play, and, she helps them out in, like I said, in any way she could come in and just, kill the Kishin if anything sort of backfires for Corona, or even save Maka's dad and the other Death Scythes if no one else can, and she'll like just pop up. I mean, I feel like it would be weird to just throw her in at the last minute, but I think when I'd be reading it, just like most people, when you're reading such an important chapter and it's the final chapter, you'll kind of look past like, oh, she just popped up out of nowhere. At least for a little bit, you will, and then you'll think back on it like it kind of didn't make sense. But for the moment, I feel like anything could work as long as it's still the final chapter. But however that works out, if they do show or if they don't, at all, which I would find very interesting. Like I said, how often they talk about her relationship with Maka's dad and her relationship with Death and or Lord Death and how powerful she was as a whole and things like that. It would be interesting if they just, that is her character. She's kind of like, like that. Just you hear about her, but you never get to see her. It would be interesting to have that in a manga. And I always like when shows do that, where it's like you want this, but they don't give it to you. They give you a great story and they don't give you the excess stuff because that's just not what they worked into the main story that they created. And I'm fine with that, even if she doesn't pop up, because you know I'd rather be disappointed that a character is talked about and not introduced than have a crappy introduction at the last minute, because that's what I want as a fan. I'd rather the creator, does what they do best and just makes a great manga, or just a great story in general for manga, comics, or games, movies, anything like that. Any form of media that involves you or a person writing the script. But aside from Maka's mom possibly coming in or not coming in, I'm definitely curious about whether or not Corona will survive. I guess more so than Maka's dad and the other Death Sites, possibly because the development that Corona had is actually, it kind of went full circle if you think about it. Corona started off evil and then became good for a long time, and then kind of went back to evil when Medusa captured him slash her again, and then really went evil when killed his or her. I'm just gonna say his because that's what they say in the manga and anime. But when he killed Medusa, and so it's like Corona's completely evil, and then they had to fight him again. If I remember right, they fought him actually in another church because they fought Maka and Soul fought in the church, and then they found him in like Italy or something like that in a different church, and they had they actually had a full fight that time where they were, well, I guess they had a full fight the first time too, but they had another a much bigger fight because everyone was a lot more powerful. And so they went through that trying to save Corona again, and it didn't really work. And then it was like, okay, well, now Corona's like the ultimate villain because Corona and the Kishin kind of blended together, and Corona was the form at first, and then they kind of like they fought her a little bit from. I can barely remember because obviously it comes out once a month, so I'm trying to remember everything that happened. But if I remember right, they fought her a little bit, and then she kind of lost control of the Kishin, and then I do remember they did like a sort of egg thing, and then the Kishin came out and he basically swallowed Corona. Like he came out of Corona and took over, and then it was the Kishin. And so they had their big fight. Everyone had their big moment. Obviously, Kid became he's Lord Death. Like I mentioned earlier, he is Lord Death now. Black Star just being even more amazing than he's been through the whole thing. Like he honestly makes the show for me. That's why, or he makes the story itself for me, because like I love the ninja characters in anything, and he's like the coolest ninja I've ever seen in this show as far as I'm concerned. And like I've seen a ton of ninja stuff. Like I watch Naruto, which is pretty much all ninjas. I read it too, even though they do like mostly Dragon Ball Z stuff now. But they still have amazing ninja moves and stuff. But Black Star is just straight up ninja, and he's kind of go for broke type of character, which is cool to see, especially when it works and he does like the sweetest moves. And everyone talks about how he is one of the strongest people. It's just that he's kind of dumb, but he's still an amazing character. And he has the once he got the black sword mode, and he just uses the katana all the time. It was even cooler to me because like I love katanas too, and he does like all these crazy moves, and it's really sweet. So he like when he got blasted in the face by the Kishin, and I thought he died. I was like, there's no way that they would actually do that to him, and they didn't. And he just caught a beam in his mouth and just like spit it back as if he just had that ability, like he's superhuman or something. But he's just that cool. And in the chapter before the most recent one, when like the Kishin basically just like destroyed his arm, and he just kept fighting. And in this new one, he like got cut, so he had like one eye was like completely white. It was almost like his face was like split right here, and that could end up being a scar, which he has the one on his arm from the last fight with Mifune, I believe. And like that was a great dynamic for his character too. I really love that. Um, and for Maka and Soul, of course, they had the most recent thing where they did the Kishin Hunter, which looks really cool. I love that they did it that way, where Maka was in like the black dress where she met Soul, and when she's inside of, or when they're like in each other's minds, she was in that black dress, and they did the piano keys on the scythe. I thought that looked really cool, and like I thought they were just gonna split them open, but then they like got them open and went in and found Corona and stuff. I really enjoyed that, and everyone, like I said, had their big moment. The three, well, I guess I can't really say three main characters because everyone, Weapon and Meister, but it's mostly the Meisters that tend to have big moments, and of course Soul. He is the main character, and I guess sort of a side point is how I love the manga for the fact that even though it's called Soul Eater, he's obviously the main character. I feel like it could have been named anything, and they would have been the main group, obviously. But I feel like it's more Maka than anything. Soul, like I said, it's called Soul Eater, but I feel like he's hardly the main character. It feels really balanced to me. Also, he doesn't even wear his original costume, which I always thought was really interesting. Like once he fought Corona and got cut, he just like never wore the jacket again. Even now, when they all went back to their original costumes, if you think about it, he went back to like the black jacket and orange shirt that he had, and I thought like that's really weird. But his main costume really only lasted for a little while. I guess it was a long time considering the manga came out month per month. But like if you watch the anime or if you read it now, where you can just go all the way through, it's actually fairly quick, and he doesn't actually have it for that long until he just gets the black jacket and the orange shirt. But they've all had their big moments, and they had the little musical note thing that they did to find their way out of the Kishin. I thought was really cool, and everyone did a soul resonance to pretty much help Soul and Maka escape. And Corona, he decided, I'm gonna stay inside and use the brew from within to destroy the darkness. And I'm just really excited to see what happens in this next chapter. Hopefully, like it would be great to just have that happy ending where everyone just survives and they beat the enemy. But I feel like this type of manga, it won't always end the way you want it to, or nothing ever really ends exactly how you want it to. I don't think some shows might, some things don't. It's different for every person, obviously. But for Soul Eater, I feel like it's the type of manga that can, like I say, can sort of give, take a risk and do certain things that you wouldn't particularly like. Like if Maka's father died, like the other two people, it would kind of suck. But I wouldn't really, honestly, like I like the characters because I remember it's like once again I can't remember the names, but the teacher who died in like the very beginning and became a zombie, and then the woman who's in love with Stein. Like if they both died, it would kind of suck. And I think actually, if the woman died, it would have a pretty cool story effect, even though it's like the last chapter. I feel like it could have a little bit of a moment for Stein, like ultimately getting rid of the darkness in some way where it just couldn't possibly affect him, even if somebody new came back with darkness or anything like that. And for some reason, I remember Nigus is her name. she's like the subordinate to the guy, or she's the weapon to the teacher. I feel like they have a pretty close connection. Like I feel like they train like forever with each other, like their whole lives or something. But obviously, I feel like that would be a pretty big moment for her as well. But the main thing would be Maka's father dying, and like that would just be the biggest thing to me. Overall, love the show or love the manga. I keep saying show, but love the manga, love the story itself. For some reason, if you watch this and you haven't um, read or seen it, even though I spoiled most of it, you should definitely check it out because the anime has amazing action, and you can also find it for free on YouTube. And the manga's even better, and it actually goes further, obviously, through the whole story. And hopefully, which I heard sort of a rumor about like years ago, or not years ago, but last year, which I don't want to say years, but a little rumor was that Bones would redo the anime once the manga finished, and I feel like they wouldn't need to do that obviously because it's almost at the end. Even if it was month per month, they knew when it was going to be wrapping up. But I think they decided to just wait until the whole story is complete, and then they're going to announce hey, we're going to redo Soul Eater, kind of like how Fullmetal Alchemist was redone, and we'll get the subbed and dubbed version. And the dubbed version, even for Soul Eater, I think is very well done. It's one of those animes where you can watch it subbed or dubbed and you'd enjoy the voice acting. But we'll get hopefully all the old voice actors back and all the amazing animation. And they might, I guess they kind of have to change up the fights. I don't know what they did with the Fullmetal Alchemist stuff, but you have like the same fights that you've gone through. Will they change the fights a little bit to make it brand new, or which I'm sure they will. I doubt they'll do the exact same scene with higher definition. That would kind of suck. But even if they did, that would be like honestly a really small chunk of what Soul Eater is, because in the anime that they did, they diverged fairly quickly from the actual story because they were catching up too fast, and there was no possible way to actually end the story early, so they had to end it on their own terms and do it their way. But even if they did that, like I said, a small chunk of the story and everything else would be more than worth it to see. Like all the fights that were in the manga, all their alternate costumes would be cool just to really look at, because I like all their sort of alternate looks. Their madness forms for some of the characters, well, pretty much everyone, at least the main characters, they get a madness form that's really cool. So I'd like to see that animated as well. But overall, I'm definitely excited for next month. Even though online it comes out, it feels like it takes 2 months because every time I check like every day, and it's just not out. It seems like it takes like 2 weeks extra or something. But excited to read it. Comment below. Let me know what you think of the manga or the show if you've only seen the show, and just what you're excited, what you love the most about Soul Eater. Your like favorite memories. Obviously, for me, anything with Black Star is a favorite memory. But if I had to pick one, it would probably be the third fight with Mifune, or the second one. But that's mostly because I'm thinking of the anime version, and they used the song in the anime for the second opening song, which is like my favorite anime opening. So that could be why that's kind of my favorite. But I like the third one as well, especially in the manga. It gets really brutal, and Soul kind of gets his foot like almost chopped right off, and it looks kind of gross, but it's also really sweet. So comment below, let me know what do you think of the series as a whole. How do you want it to end? What did you hope to see? Like it could be Maka's mother, or what do you hope to see, or what did you hope to see that you don't think will happen? And just anything else you want to comment on as far as Soul Eater goes, or just anything random if you want, because people do that. It's YouTube. But thanks for watching this. If you stuck throughout, and I guess there's no point in saying this, but thanks for anyone who watched a couple of minutes, even though you didn't get to this point, unless you skipped through. But thanks.